we're going to go through our project management part 2 webinar today. My name's Sarah. I'll be walking you through today, and we have Ashley with us, who's also going to be kind of monitoring our Q&A feature in our chat. So if you have any questions, please feel free to place those in the Q&A or the chat features, and we'll make sure we get those answered along the way. What we're going to be looking at today is, you can see I'm within an in-progress project, and we're going to be talking about some features that can really be handled at many different points during the project work stages. So the first one is going to be the dialogue tab. We're going to look at RFIs, other forms of correspondence, and our meeting minutes and agendas features. And then we're going to finish up with submittals. And these are both features that are available, both of these tabs are available as early as the request stage of the project. Really, the dialogue tab is even available in draft. So we can begin to send out things like RFIs and emails, meeting minutes and agendas as soon as we create a project. Once we're in request stage, when we're building our estimate and preparing our proposal, we'll start to see that submittals tab, and we can go ahead and take care of these items at any point in time from the time we see the tab show up all the way to the end of the project. So we're going to start with the dialogue tab today. And like I said, at any point in the project, I can come into the dialogue tab, and I'm going to have 3 pages on this tab. So if you're familiar with how to navigate around, you'll know that you can either navigate using the home icon and see your kind of highlights reel of important pages here, or you can come down to the menu on each individual tab. And in this dialogue tab, we have 3 pages: our manage correspondence page, issues, and meeting minutes. We're going to go through all 3 today, but we're going to start with correspondence. And to create a new piece of correspondence, I go ahead and hit the new icon right here. That's going to give me a list of what we call document templates. Now, ordinarily, when you first start with us and you have your brand new RedTeam Flex database, you're going to see RFIs for certain, but you're also going to see a couple of other default forms. We generally give you a transmittal letter, a 48 hours notice, a blank set of letterhead, and an email. So you can go ahead and send emails from here or send letters on your professional letterhead. But most often, what we see folks using this tab for is RFIs. That being said, you can have as many different document templates as you want. You can see this is our training database, and we've actually put in a whole bunch of different documents based on all of our different trainings and testings that we've been using this database for. So you may not see as many as me, but you can come in and find the one that you're looking for and click on it in order to fill out that form. So we're going to go ahead and look at just really any of our RFIs. Let's go with this basic, default RFI, because that's going to look the most like what you'll see in your database. We click on the name of the document we want to fill out. Now, other things I've seen people have in here would be something like a notice to proceed or any other kind of form document that you may need to send out to external parties on a regular basis during your project. So we're going to go ahead and click on RFI. And as I click on a document template, I'm going to get a pop-up that allows me to fill in all pertinent information. I'm going to fill in the blanks on this form, and then I'm going to be able to attach documents if needed, and I can view the final product before I send it out. So this is an RFI, and you'll notice I have to fill in, at a bare minimum, the items with the orange asterisks. The items that don't have an orange asterisk are optional. So we're going to go ahead and look at the first one, which would be issue. Now you can see I don't have any issues on this project yet to pick from. Don't worry, we're going to get to the topic of issues here shortly, but an issue is essentially a topic of discussion within your project, and you'll be using issues to build your meeting agendas and meeting minutes. But you can also tie your RFIs and your other pieces of correspondence directly to an issue or a topic that you've been discussing with your project team. And that can help you keep track of exactly what was said on various documents and emails outside of those meetings. Next, you'll see the ID. This sequentially numbers your RFIs. So this is telling me this is my first RFI for the project. Next is the created date. That is auto-filling to today, but I can go ahead and backfill, push that back or forward if I need with my calendar icon right here. Required date is the due date by which I need an answer from my recipient. So I'm going to go ahead and say I need their answer by next Friday. It's important that I have that answer by that time. The author here is going to fill in your project manager automatically. We can set that to fill in the current author. That's just based on your settings for that document template down in the configuration menu. So I could open this up and shift this to someone else on the project team. We'll go ahead and leave it as our project manager. Our recipient, this list is generally going to show us only customers and third parties. That's our default setting for RFIs, is that recipients should be either a third party, that means an architect or an engineer, a consultant, or a customer. But you can change the settings. Again, in your configuration menu, you can say that I'd like to be able to use this RFI for internal use and ask questions amongst my employees. It just depends on your use case. But we're going to go ahead and send this to our customer, right? So we'll go ahead and send this to Trader Sam. We're going to CC anyone that we'd like to have visibility on this RFI. So when I hit add, I'm going to be able to CC anybody from the project team. And as we set our CCs, you're going to see that that autofills for the remainder of your RFIs. So if you have certain folks on your project team that you like to be included on each RFI, this CC will kind of carry over to future RFIs as well, although it can be edited at any time. And then received from, this is just another optional field. So not every RFI template will have these fields, but we have some custom fields that we've put in. So received from, the contract ID, those types of things are going to be optional pieces. So if you have specific information on top of what you see in our default RFIs that we provide you, and you say, hey, it's really important that I include the contract ID on every RFI, or that I indicate who I received it from if I'm passing on a question from my vendor, we can help you configure those additional fields as needed. So we can add anybody that we'd like in there. And then our description is just the title of this RFI. And this is not a drop down. This is just my Google Chrome showing you what I like to type in for my example. So I'm going to go with restroom fixture selection, but you can type in any title you'd want. The reference here is an optional field. I can go ahead and indicate that they should maybe see attached photos, or we can reference a particular document or website. And then the most important part here is the question. It's an RFI, I'm requesting information. So what am I asking for? This is where we can type or copy and paste a question. And this can be very detailed. You've got some formatting capabilities here and plenty of space to type. I'm going to keep things fairly simple and just say, please select restroom fixture finish from the attached photos. Right, as I type my message in, I can save. And then the last piece down here that you may find that is optional is suggestion. And that's going to allow me to voice my professional opinion. If I want to go ahead and suggest what I think the best answer or the best way forward might be, I can go ahead and do so here. And I'm going to go ahead and say that the bronze option has the best wear life. So I think that would be the best option for this customer, and I'm explaining why. Right, we go ahead and save. And then we do have, even beyond that custom field, that contract ID, we have a little checkbox here that you'll see on every form that says company confidential. And that's going to allow you to check a box in order to say that this RFI should be kept off of our project reports. If I feel that this needs to be kept a little more private, I can do so by checking this box. Do note that your recipient and all of your CC contacts are still going to be able to see it, even if they're outside your company, but that just keeps it off your project reports, specifically that performance overview report. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next step, right? I can click on next step, or I can click on step 2 over here on the left. This gives me an opportunity to add attachments to my RFI. Now I can link to something that's already within the project if I know I've already uploaded it somewhere. So I could go ahead and hit link, and I could look through my plans and specifications, or I could look through my site photos, anything that I'd like, and I can check the box and attach it. I can also drag and drop files or pull them in by browsing. So I'm going to go ahead and pull in some sample photos here. These restroom fixture finishes. And you can see it's going to pull all of those in. Now it's going to tell me if I have a file type that's not allowed. So this is a web page. It's not one of our orange allowed file types. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it. The others, I can go ahead and update their description or title, if you will. Notice on this plans and specs page, I can't update that because I already titled it when I uploaded it to the project the first time. We'll go ahead and upload once you have all your attachments. Once that upload's complete, you move on to your last step, which is just a confirmation, letting you know that you've created an RFI and it has 4 attachments. From here, you've got several options on how to proceed. I can view the draft document, which is exactly where we're going to go. We want to make sure it looks good before we send it out. We can create an action item if we would like to have someone else, maybe a supervisor, take a look at this RFI before it's finalized and sent out. We can create an action item. Those are trackable through the team tab of your project, so you can come back and mark those complete. Plus, they send an email notification, which is helpful because I can say, hey, supervisor, can you review and commit this RFI? And then lastly, we can add a note if we just want to add any notes about this RFI for the rest of our team to see later. But we're going to go ahead and view the draft copy. Before we send it out, I always advocate taking a look at the draft copy in case it doesn't look the way you intended and you need to make some edits. So that's going to pull up in a separate browser tab. You can see our draft watermarks here to indicate that this is not a final copy. And we can see all the basic information. You're going to have your company logo here. You're going to have your RFI, right? Request for information, basic information from step 2 that you filled in. And then down here, you've got all your attachments. So we have, for photo attachments, a preview of that photo, and then a hyperlink to actually open the file itself. And as we come down to the bottom, that plans and specifications document, right, maybe a drawing, is just a hyperlink. If it's not a JPEG file, we're not going to see a photo preview, but they do still have the hyperlink to open and view or download that file as needed. Then down at the bottom, you've got your request and any suggestion, and then note there for that custom field, there's that contract ID. So if we're happy with this, we want to go ahead and hit the commit button to finalize it. And then we want to email it out so that our recipient can go ahead and answer this question. But if we're unhappy with any part of this, it's in draft. So we can come back right here. We're going to see it in the dialog tab, and we can hit the pencil to make any edits that we need. It's that simple to come back in and open up those same steps that you were working on a moment ago. But let's assume we're happy with this RFI. We're going to go ahead and commit it to make it a final copy. Once it's committed, it's going to go ahead and reload this page and remove the draft watermark. Now that that watermark is gone, we can go ahead and email this out to anyone we'd like. Notice you also have forward buttons if you need to forward to anyone on your team to review, or you can create a potential change. So you may want to tune in for our change management webinar down the road to see how that works, but this is going to jump you straight to that contract tab where you're creating a potential change based off of this RFI. But let's go ahead and look at our email button, right? We can open this up. This is going to allow us to indicate who should be in the to field, right? Trader Sam is already here because he is the recipient we selected when we built this RFI. And then we've got Ashley, our project manager, who's CC'd. That happens automatically. But if you need to add anyone at this point, you can hit the to or the CC buttons right here, and you can select from anyone on the project team to add them. You can also add external CCs. These are people who may not be contacts within your database, but you can go ahead and type in email addresses separated by commas here, and we're going to include those folks in this email. So they're going to get a copy of this RFI, and they're going to be able to interact through the comments panel. You can also blind carbon copy, and then you've got a space here for a personal message. So that email we send them is a pretty canned form email that's going to look like it comes from Ashley, right? Because she is the sender here. But it doesn't have much in the way of personal message. It's just going to say, hey, you've received an RFI from Ashley. Please click here to open and view. If you want to put any additional personal message or context, you can do that right here. Now, I'm not going to send this one out, but let's imagine that we did send it out. We emailed this out, and what we're going to be doing is simply waiting on the response to come back. It shows us that we have 8 more days until it's due, and myself as the sender or Ashley as our project manager, we don't necessarily need to be coming in here and checking every single day, because when we send it out, when the answer is submitted by our recipient, all collaborators are going to get a notification that the answer has been submitted. And in fact, if our recipient has questions, we can always come back to this document. So they can access this document from their email at any time. As long as they hold on to that email, they can come back to it. They can also access it from the plan room. They're going to be able to place comments and questions right here and share with everyone else. And everyone on this collaborators list gets a notification whenever a comment is placed or when the answer is submitted. So As the sender, I'd be waiting for that email notification to tell me that the answer has come in. I'll also see it as an action item in my action items tab. And then I can come in here and view it. Now I'm going to go ahead and answer on their behalf so that we can see what that looks like. But let's imagine Trader Sam got confused. He wasn't sure how to handle answering this RFI through his email. It's really quite simple. The email says, click here to see the RFI. When he clicks that button, he sees the form we've been looking at, and he'll have an option at the bottom of the page to go ahead and type in, add attachments, and hit submit. So it's really quite self-explanatory, but if for any reason he gets confused, he could give Ashley a phone call and tell her what the answer is. She can come in here and hit the tools icon and answer on behalf of the recipient. That's just permissions based, so you get to determine who within your company will have permission to answer an RFI on behalf of a recipient. But it brings open a pop-up screen for me, and I just scroll down to the response section. Who responded? Well, Trader Sam, he gave me a phone call today, and his answer was, we would prefer the Chrome option. And then I can even leave myself a note, receive answer via phone. Right? We can attach anything we'd like, any files that came with that answer, and we can go ahead and update any of this information. Now, these are custom fields. What you're going to see on a standard RFI template from RedTeam Flex is these items from attachment upwards. These items down here are an example of additional user-defined fields that we can help you add. So if you have additional notes, we can add additional text boxes for your recipient to type into. If you need a follow-up date or a checkbox for, hey, is this going to have a time or a cost impact on the project, you can allow your recipient to answer those types of custom questions. So I'm not going to fill those in for this one, but do note that they can be configured there by your administrators, or you can reach out to us for help. Now, once I put in an answer, I'm going to hit next step. And notice it's going to ask me, do you want to send notifications? What this is asking is, if Sam had entered his own answer through his email, everyone who is a collaborator would get notified automatically. Because we're answering on his behalf, it wants to know if we still want to send those to everyone else. I'm going to say no. And then we move on. Once we've moved past this step, we can go ahead and close out the screen because we've saved that answer. And then this page is going to refresh, and you can see that it was answered today. It's going to update the due date to just say due today because that's when the answer came in. So from there, like I said, if Sam had answered on his own, I would get that notification, and I could come in here to the dialog tab and simply hit the document to view the answer. And I can see not only on the right-hand side in the collaborative console that the answer was submitted on his behalf by me. I can see when, and I can see the answer itself. But I can also come down to the bottom, and you're going to see that response to the RFI. So you can see it was responded on this date by this individual. Here's the answer, and time and cost impact were a no, and there were no attachments. So we can see that complete response right there. It's also going to be visible in the plan room if you choose to share your answered RFIs to the plan room. Now, the reason we put the timestamp of the answer over here is so that if you have pre-answer discussion on this comments panel, you can then also have post-answer discussion, and this is going to go ahead and break them up nicely. So you can have any follow-up discussion needed here. You do, permission dependent, you do have the ability to come in and change the answer if needed. So if you have follow-up discussion and the answer gets shifted, you can come in and reflect that. Otherwise, once you've settled on an answer and all follow-up discussion has concluded, the last step for any RFI is going to be to mark it closed. And I'll do that by hitting the tools icon right here. And I'm going to select the change status option. There we go. We're going to say closed, which means it's been answered and the answer has been accepted. We're going to say, no, I don't want to leave any additional notes. If I did leave notes, they'd show up right over here in the notes column. Now it's been closed. And the most important thing to know about a closed RFI is that if you refresh the dialog tab or you leave and come back, you won't see your closed RFIs immediately, but they're not gone. We save them. We've just removed them. We've auto-filtered them off the main page to reduce clutter. We want you to see your open items that need action. So that's what you'll see here on the main page. But notice I've got a warning at the bottom. There's one closed document. To view, select filter options. So I come up here to my filter and I go to status. And I just simply say, I want to see my closed items and only my closed items. I can filter and hide to close back up those filter options. And there's my RFI. I filtered for it. I can come in here, look at the attached files, view the document and the answer, add notes, or look at the metadata log at any point in time. So that's really all we have for RFIs. The last thing I'll mention is that you do have reporting capabilities up here. So you've got an RFI summary that naturally kind of sorts this page into just RFIs. And that's going to be a little bit more brief explanation of each RFI. You do also have a document log. That's a little bit more thorough in terms of the amount of information it gives, but it is going to show all different types of document templates. So again, if you're filling out RFIs and NTPs and transmittal letters on this dialogue, this correspondence page, that documents log is going to include all of those. However, you can use your filter here and set those filters and then pull the documents log. And that's going to allow you to pull certain subsets of your items from this correspondence page. So with that, we'll take a moment here. I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A or the chat, but please go ahead and type those in, and we will pause again here momentarily if I see any of those pop up. The next place that we're going to go is going to be our meeting minutes page. So again, I can get here from the dialogue tab under the menu, or I can get here from the home icon under meeting minutes and agendas. Either one works, and I can start sending out meeting agendas and meeting minutes as soon as the project is created. So as soon as you hit the draft stage, you have the dialogue tab and you can begin logging meetings. Here from the meeting minutes page, when I hit the new icon, I get two options. An agenda is an upcoming meeting that has not happened yet. Meeting minutes is a completed meeting where I'm simply logging what was talked about. So we're going to go the long way. We're going to start with an agenda and then add minutes to it once the meeting has happened. But if you don't end up creating an agenda ahead of time, you can skip straight to minutes and say, hey, I didn't create one, but I do have minutes. I do want to log a meeting. So we'll create an agenda. Now, the steps to fill this out are fairly simple. It's similar to the RFI in that I have to fill in everything with an orange asterisk. Everything else is optional. And it's going to essentially fill in the blanks and then let me view the completed document before I send it out. So here under step 1, we first need to pick what type of meeting we're having. This is really important because RedTeam tracks meetings within your projects by type. So if I say I'm having a safety meeting and I put in the date as tomorrow, when I click out of this date field, I want you to watch right up here. You're going to get a little message that says, your request is being processed, please wait. It only takes a moment, but what it's doing is it's checking to see if you've ever had a meeting of this type on this project before. I have not. So this is meeting ID 001. It's my first safety meeting. We track the number by type for that project. So this is my first safety meeting on this project. Now I can put in my own numbering system. I could put in 1, 2, 3, and the next meeting, the next safety meeting on this project would be 1, 2, 4. But it's going to do more than that. Let's say I've already had 2 safety meetings on this project. It will autofill ID 003, but it's also going to autofill all the information from meeting 02. And that's really useful because if I'm having a safety meeting every Friday and I'm including the same people and we're talking over the same topics, I don't want to have to build that from scratch every single week. So now it auto-populates exactly what was on here for last week, and I can make small tweaks and edits. So again, that happens by meeting type. And for that matter, you can customize your meeting types in configuration. You're going to see which ones have already been used on this project and which ones have not, and you can customize that list. This is our first meeting, so we're going to need to fill in everything for this particular meeting. Start and end times right here. You can adjust the time zone if needed. Your purpose is essentially the title of your meeting. So I'm going to say that this is our week 1 safety meeting. Again, you can type in anything you'd like. Venue can be a physical place such as conference room B, or you could copy and paste a URL for a virtual meeting here. It's not going to be a clickable link, but it will at least be accessible for people to copy and paste into their web browser. Author here allows us to pick anyone on the project team. So we can go ahead and say Ashley's our author as our project manager, and we can add as many invitees as we want. You have to invite at least one person or it's not going to let you move off of this screen. So let's go ahead and add invitees. And we're going to see the list of all of our team members on this project. Now I can select everybody, nobody, or a couple of individuals. We can also look at different subsets of the team. Well, this is a safety meeting. I really want to see my team and my vendors, right? I can go ahead and invite specific people from my vendors list. Once you've determined everybody you want to invite, you hit select, and they're going to show up on this list. Now, if I need to remove anyone, I've got the X. If I grab them by accident, I can continue to add more as long as this is a draft. The other invitees section is just like that external CC that we saw with the RFI. I can go ahead and type in any email addresses that I'd like and separate those by commas, and those individuals will be able to get a copy of this agenda. Notes, this is not the place where you need to type out every single thing you're going to talk about in this meeting. We're going to do that in step 2 under issues. But this is a place for you to put general overview notes or specific information such as things I need folks to do before the meeting or something they should bring with them to the meeting, instructions on where to park, just about anything you can think of that they may need to know in terms of general notes before the meeting happens. Notice you do have space here to go ahead and drag this right-hand corner down. If you need to type more, you've got space to type a couple paragraphs here if you need it. Once we fill that in, we're going to go to the next step, which is issues. Like I said, issues in Red Team means topic. We're essentially saying topics of discussion. And issues are tracked by project. So as you start to add new topics of discussion to your project, you'll see them all listed here. So on every meeting, as you open the list of issues, you'll see all previous topics that have been talked about in past meetings, and you can add them and talk about them more. I'm going to go ahead and add some new issues, and we're going to start. We can go ahead and select default issues, right? So I'll select restrooms. We're going to talk about that because we had the RFI. You can select just about anything else from our default list. And by the way, you can customize this list as well. So you can write your own list of default issues in configuration, or you can create new issues. So let's add restrooms, and then we'll come back and create a new issue that's not in the default list. I'm going to go ahead and call this safety walkthroughs. And under the narrative, I can describe what exactly do I mean when I say safety walkthroughs. Well, what I mean is we're going to review all walkthrough findings for the past week. And we're going to save. And then we can actually even nest issues. So I'm going to get something a little more specific on safety walkthroughs. I'm going to add new, create a new issue, and we're going to call it near misses. Discuss all potential accidents avoided this week. And we're going to nest that underneath safety walkthroughs. The date is telling you essentially the date that that topic was raised. And again, you've got the company confidential option to say, this is a topic that shouldn't show up on my project reports. Let's go ahead and save. And now you can see that near misses is tucked underneath safety walkthroughs. And in future, when I go ahead and select safety walkthroughs, it's going to pull in all the sub issues as well. You can always delete anything you don't need with a trash can, but it's going to bring in, if I bring in a parent issue, it will bring in all those nested issues along with it. So I would add all the topics we're going to talk about. Notice that all of these say no discussions. What that means is there are no historical discussions. We've never talked about these topics before. So there's nothing to include from prior meetings. If we had historical discussions, you would get an expandable drop down here where you could go ahead and see past discussions, and you could check a box to include those past discussions on this meeting agenda for the purposes of just kind of reminding everyone what we talked about last time and allowing them to brush up and be ready to kind of pick up where we left off. Remind them of older action items, whatever you may need. You can arrange these issues in any order that you'd like. So if I hit arrange, I can simply drag and drop. And I'm going to say, we're going to talk now. Notice the parent issue is what I'm moving. So the nested issues follow the parent. We're going to say, you know what, we're going to talk about restrooms last. It's going to save automatically. And when I hit back, it's going to go ahead and update. Once we've got all the topics and any historical discussions that we want on this list, we'll go ahead and move on to our last step, which is attachments. Just like we saw with the RFI, I can link to something already within the project or drag and drop new files here. This is anything that you'd like to attach to go out with the agenda ahead of the meeting. And then we'll go ahead and close the form. And you can see here on our meeting minutes page, we have a draft agenda. The fact that it says agenda means the meeting hasn't happened yet. And the fact that it's in a draft status means it's not finalized. We can come back in and make edits. When we think we're ready, we want to go ahead and hit the document icon to view a copy of that agenda. Let's take a look, make sure it looks good before we send it out. You can see the project name and number, the number of the meeting. We call that the meeting ID. You've got the when and where of the meeting up top, who's invited. We're going to show you their company, their name, their contact information, and we're also going to show a space for taking attendance. Not that you have to use it, but if you have a large meeting and you'd like to post this on the door and have folks initial as they come in, or if you'd like to have someone who's kind of checking off folks as they walk into the room, you can do so. You've got space here. There's your general overview notes as you type them in. And then down here's the agenda, and you can see all of our issues, and those nested issues have this little arrow to indicate, right, this is a subtopic under safety walkthroughs. You're going to see those narratives every single time. So I type in a description of what safety walkthroughs or near misses means, and that narrative is going to show up every single time that topic is listed on an agenda. And then no discussions, right? No historical discussions to see for these topics. So if we're happy with this, we're going to hit commit. If not, we can hit the pencil to go back and make edits. When I commit an agenda, it's going to ask me this question: would you like to send invitations to guests? If you do, you're sending each of the guests here, including your external CCs, an email that contains a link where they can add this invitation to their calendar along with a copy of this document. So they're going to get the agenda form. They're also going to be able to add the meeting itself to their calendar if they'd like. I'm going to say don't send. You don't have to send those right now. You can always come back and send them later. Or you can simply hit the email button and email out just a copy of this document to anyone you'd like. Let's go back here. We can see now that agenda is committed. We have metadata logs, just like we do with all of our documents, where you can open and see who created it, who committed it, and when. And then we'd go ahead and send that out. Now, once the meeting has taken place, it's as simple as coming in here to the tools icon and adding minutes to this agenda. Again, if I never made an agenda, I can go up to the new icon and create standalone minutes. But I'm going to go ahead and add minutes to this agenda because I want you to see how simple and easy that is. But before I do, let me check again. Yep, I don't think we have any questions yet, so we'll continue on. But again, please feel free to drop those in and we'll stop as needed. We're going to go ahead and then add or tweak or edit anything about this meeting that didn't fit what was listed on the agenda. So I might not need to change anything in step one. If the meeting took place late or got moved somewhere else, I can reflect that here, right? It was delayed. It actually happened at 1:30 and it was in conference room C. We can also indicate who was in attendance. So this gives us a chance to say, you know what, Sarah didn't make it, but everybody else was present. I can toggle folks back and forth between present and not present with this arrow. I can remove people with the X if I don't want to see them listed on the minutes at all. And I can add unexpected participants. Maybe my customer brought along a couple of extra people that I wasn't expecting. We can go ahead and add them here. Other participants is still that external CC feature. You can go ahead and add any email addresses that aren't in your contacts list for your database. And then overview notes, if you need to, you can update those. Next step, this is really the meaty part of meeting minutes, right? This is where we go ahead and add what we talked about. So this is where you'll be doing the most work. You'll be adding discussions to those issues or topics that you talked about. And you can actually edit the list of topics as well. So if we talked about something that we didn't expect to come up, we can add an issue and then add discussions to it. If we didn't get around to talking about restrooms, we can actually hit the trash can and delete it off the minutes so that it's reflected that we didn't even talk about that, even though we planned on it. Otherwise, we can come in here and add discussions. And under subjects, we can say, what exactly are we talking about? And we can just say that this week we were talking about a missed walkthrough on 10/9, right? And in the narrative, maybe we discuss why we missed it. The PM was stuck in traffic. And so didn't get there in time, and we weren't able to complete the safety walkthrough that day for whatever reason. We can go ahead and put all those details here, right? Everything we talked about, you can drag down that right-hand corner and type a bunch of information here. You also are required to select who's responsible, but the answer might be nobody. You can say no action required. You can say everyone's responsible for following up on this item, or you can pick an individual person. If action is required, notice you have the option here to put in an action plan. Now, we're not going to have any action plan for missing a safety walkthrough. If we perform these daily, we'll just keep performing them daily. So we don't have to put anything in. But if we had an action that needed to take place, we could go ahead and then list it here, so it will show up on the minutes, and send an action item to that individual. So I'm going to say no action required on this one. But let's go ahead and create under near misses something that needs follow-up. And we'll say electrical exposures, right? We had some sort of issue with exposed wires in the second floor restroom. And our action plan is for the electrician to correct by the end of the day. We can either simply list, hey, this is our electrician, and they're going to correct by the end of the day. That shows up on the minutes, but it doesn't notify that individual. If I check the action item box, that sends them an email, and it creates a trackable task on the team tab of my project so that I can verify it got completed and mark it off when it's done. We can put in a due date. Needs to be done by the end of the day, right? We said we had the meeting on the 13th, so we'll say the 13th. And save. We don't have to add discussions to everything, and we can add multiple discussions. If we had several things to talk about in terms of safety walkthroughs or several near misses to list for the week, we can go ahead and add as many discussions as we want to each issue. And again, you can reorder these if needed. You can arrange them in the order that you actually talked about them. Then we move on, and our last step is attachments. We can go ahead and add any attachment that should go out after the meeting with the minutes right here. Then we close. And again, we see it's in a draft status, but it now says meeting. This is safety meeting 001, same ID. You may be wondering, well, what happened to my agenda? It's still here. If you hit the tools icon, you can always go back and view that older agenda. But now you've also got the minutes right here. And if you hit the document icon there, it's going to open the minutes rather than the agenda now. So we open up our minutes. They're formatted in almost exactly the same way as the agenda. The difference is this present and not present section is going to indicate who was there and who didn't make it. Your notes if they've been updated. And then there we can see that instead of just listing the topics, we're listing all of the discussions had for that particular topic. And this is just showing our discussions from today. But if we had any open historical discussions for these issues, safety walkthroughs and near misses, we would see all those open historical discussions showing up here too. So if 2 weeks from now we have another safety meeting and we don't need to see this missed safety walkthrough from the 9th, we would need to close out that discussion, which we'll show you how to do in just a moment. So as long as the discussion remains open, it will show automatically on future sets of minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this, but remember, if I needed to make edits, I could hit the pencil to go back and do that. We commit. Hit OK. And now we see the draft watermark removed. We can email that out to anyone we'd like. From here, the last page we're going to look at is very related to meeting minutes. So still in the dialogue tab, we've already seen correspondence and meeting minutes. We're going to look at issues. This is where we house all those topics of discussion that you create and use for your meeting minutes and agendas, and that you can tie your RFIs to. You saw when we filled out the RFI, I could pick an issue, such as restrooms, to tie it to. So in here, if you've utilized an issue, the trash can will go gray. I can't delete an issue once we've talked about it. But what I can do is say, you know what, we're never going to talk about it again. I can come in here and close out that topic, that issue. We can also expand out each of these and see all discussions that have been had in the past. And this is important because, again, that missed safety walkthrough on the 9th, it was important to list it on this meeting, but we don't need to see it again next week. So we would come in here and mark it closed. As of today, right? Go ahead and mark your closed date. And now it's completed. You can see the created and closed dates. And we can always come back here to see it, but we don't need it to show up on all our future minutes. The last thing I want to show you is that right here, you have the ability to open a record of all the discussions ever had and all the related documents. So this shows me every discussion from oldest to newest for this topic. It shows me any RFIs or other document templates that were linked to this issue. And again, notice you've got a shortcut to create a potential change right from here. So we know that some of these discussions can lead to contract changes with your owner, and that allows you to jump straight to creating a potential change right from here. So that's really going to do it for the dialogue tab. Still not seeing any questions, so I am going to keep flowing to submittals, but I'm happy to answer those as you have them. Otherwise, we'll have a little time at the end as well. But we're going to go to submittals now, which is allowing us to create a list or log of submittals and then walk them through a workflow to get them from the point where I initially state that I need them all the way through to the point where they've been approved or rejected and we've notified the vendor. Now, I will say things to keep in mind the first time you see submittals. This can feel a little overwhelming if you've never looked at it before, but submittals is broken down into 9 steps here, with a 10 being anything canceled along the way. These 9 steps look like a lot, right? And we're going to go through them in about 20 minutes. You will never go through them as quickly as I'm going to go through them today, right? It's meant to be a process that takes weeks, days, or weeks most often. And it really boils down to just 3 emails. So if you're thinking about how does the submittals workflow operate, I create my list of items that I need. And we do that by spec section and cost code. We'll help you build them out. And then you send an email to your vendor, your subcontractor or your supplier, asking for what you need. When they send the item to you, you get to mark it reviewed and apply your stamp and send email number 2, submitting it to your approver. That's normally an architect or an engineer, but it depends on your situation. You'd go ahead and send that in with email number 2 to get it approved or rejected. When you receive that answer from your architect or your engineer or your owner, you send email number 3. My third and final email is to notify the vendor of the answer and let them know if any additional action or resubmission is required. They will go ahead and acknowledge, and that's the end of the workflow. So we're going to walk through with a couple of sample items here, but again, keep in mind, it's almost impossible that you would be running through it as quickly as I do today. You're meant to be able to come and go, and as you open this page, you'll see items sitting at each step along the way so that you can keep track of exactly what needs to happen next with each item. So at any point in my project, from request all the way through in progress, I can decide that now is the right time to begin building my list of required submittal items for the project and building my submittals log. To do that, I hit the new icon. We're going to build out a couple of sample items one at a time. And you can do that this way. If you don't need a lot of items, or if they're very unique to this project, you can build them out item by item. You can also set up a list of default items in your configuration menu. So if you frequently utilize the same items over and over across projects, you can build a list of those items. And now when you say import default submittal items, you're going to be able to come to this list and just check off the items that you need. Go ahead and choose the related cost code for the project and any reference, which is your spec section. So it can just help to make sure you're consistent and grabbing the right items every time. Cancel that out and look at our other options. You have the ability to import submittals from a spreadsheet. So if you find yourself building a list outside of RedTeam Flex for whatever reason, you can bring those in via spreadsheet if that's faster than creating them one item at a time. And the last one is to import from PlanGrid. If you're using our PlanGrid integration, you can go ahead and bring those over from PlanGrid if needed. We're going to go ahead and just build out a couple of items, and we're going to walk those through the workflow. So you will need to fill in all of these items. All are required based on that orange text or orange asterisk there. The reference is the spec section. So I'm going to go ahead and put in our example spec section. Subject here is more or less the title of this group of items. And I can say materials information, right? We can type in whatever we'd like. The key piece here is the type. You can select one or more types of items that you need, and each one that you pick will walk through the workflow as a separate item. So I'm going to say I need material certificates and mixed design. I selected two, and they're related to a cost code. So we tie your submittal items not only to a spec section, but directly to a cost code, so that when you create your commitments, your subcontracts, and your purchase orders, we can list exactly what items are required on those commitment forms, and just helps keep everything organized and keep your vendors informed. So we're going to go ahead and pick a cost code from the project. We'll say masonry. Then we need to pick a couple of dates. The critical date is the date by which you need an answer from the approver. So that's email number 2. I need my architect to provide an approval or rejection, let's say by the end of November. I don't want to go forward a year. We want to go forward a month. There we go. If I need my approver to answer by the end of November, my required date then is the date by which I need initial submission from the vendor. So I'm going to go ahead and say that if we have about 6 weeks, I'm going to give them about 3 weeks. So by the end of that first week in November, I need them to submit so that I have another 3 weeks to send out to the approver and get their answer back. The last piece right here that you may have noticed me skipping over is this submittal checkbox. This is asking whether this is a true submittal item or not. Now, why is it asking that? Because we see plenty of clients using this submittals tab and this submittals workflow for things like closeout documents or anything else that may follow this kind of 3 email system, where I need to gather it from a sub and provide it to an owner or an approver, and then provide the answer back to the sub. So if you have any documentation that follows this workflow that isn't a submittal, you can create the item here and then simply uncheck the submittals box. And that's for reporting purposes, so that as the items are gathered and you start looking at reporting, you have the ability to say, I want to see only my true submittal items on this submittals log, or I want to see only my closeout documents. So useful if you have a need to track things like closeout documents. So we're going to go ahead and hit save. Note, I do have a save and new button. So if I want to work my way through every spec section and every cost code, I can do so right here without closing out this screen. It'll save these 2 items and blank this page out so that I can enter more of them. We're just going to create these 2 and walk them through. And if you remember nothing else about what I say about submittals today, the only thing I want you to remember is that in order to move your submittals along, you want to look at the next step right here, and you want to hit the tools icon to look for the item or the option that matches the next step. That's all you need to know. That's really all there is to it. We're going to walk you through every step of the way. So what it's saying here is we've just created these items. And in order to get things going, like everything else in RedTeam, we need to commit them. While they're a draft here and they're sitting in step 1, I can edit to change things like the spec section, the cost code, the dates required, the title. All those things can be edited. You do have a project preference. You can check a box up here in your project preferences to say, I'd like them to create in a committed status. In fact, I think that's defaulted for most of our clients, where unless you tell us not to, we'll just jump them straight to step 2 and they're ready to send out. I'm going to go ahead and move them along with these check boxes. You can move items along one at a time with the tools icon. But again, if I had 50 items sitting in step 1, I don't want to have to hit commit 50 times. So instead, I'll just check box the items that I want and move them through in a group. Let's commit them. Now we see they move down. Notice this little red flag, right? So when I come to this page, you get the ability to see there are 2 items sitting in step 2. Maybe there's 4 items sitting in step 5. You can see where things sit and move them along. The next step here, in step 2, this is the only place you're going to see 2 options, upload or request submittals. Request submittals is our standard option. That means I'm going to send out email number 1 asking my vendor to submit their items. But we have plenty of clients for whom they already have submittal items on hand. They're not necessarily waiting to be able to send out these emails from Flex. They may have very proactive vendors, or they may have created a submittals log externally and been gathering items before they even put the project in Flex. Whatever the case may be, if you already have submittal items on hand, you can take a shortcut and simply upload them. And to do that, we would hit the pencil. So we're going to show you the shortcut, and then I'm actually going to take you the more traditional route, or the long way. So let's hit the pencil. And we can go ahead and skip here from committed all the way through to reviewed by simply filling in information. What company, what provider sent these to me? Who was the person that actually sent them? When did I request it? What was the due date and how many copies? As I fill all of this in, it's going to then allow me to indicate, well, what date did I receive it? And what did I receive? If it was an electronic attachment, it's going to allow me to attach the file. Cloud storage, it's going to allow me to put in the Dropbox or Google Drive URL link. Physical item, it's going to ask for a tracking number that was used to ship it to me. And then finally, if we're ready, we can even mark it reviewed right from here. We can indicate the date that we reviewed it as the GC, and then we can go ahead and indicate what we're passing on to the approver. The files or items that I'm passing on to the approver don't have to be the same as what I received. Maybe I received it in the mail via physical item, and then I scanned it and I'm sending it as an electronic attachment. So you have options for both there. Once you fill all this out and hit save, that's going to allow you to jump right from committed down to reviewed, and you're ready to send out email number 2 to your approver. But assuming you don't have those items on hand yet, we'll go the long way so that you can send out an email to your vendor asking for those items. And to do that, I can hit the tools icon, or I can use the check boxes and move items through in groups. So if I check 4 or 5 items, I can hit the tools icon on any of those items and take actions as a group. Request for submittals is the creation of that first email out to the vendor. So we can see we've got a sequential numbering system for your request for submittal number. Subject line, author are already filled in. Provider allows me to pick the company that I'm asking for, right? So Able Pavement and Concrete is doing my masonry work. I'm going to request it from them. It auto-populates my main point of contact, but I can pick anyone I'd like. Requested on today. Required, you already filled in this date earlier. So then any instructions, you can go ahead and place any additional context or instructions there, and double check that you got the right items included. If there are any other items sitting in step 2 that you did not include, they'll be down here and you can check the box to include them. This allows you to send a single email with as many items as you need out to that vendor. We'll go ahead and save. Now, hitting save does not send the email. Hitting save just creates the email. It's going to jump down to requested, but the next step is going to say you need to commit and email the request for submittal. Just like everything else, we want you to get a chance to review it before you send it out. So let's take a look while it's in draft and make sure we don't need to make any edits. Here we can see our draft copy, who it's to, who it's from, basic project information, and any of those additional instructions you chose to type in, the items needed, and how many copies. Now, when we commit this and email it out to the vendor, they're going to get an email. You've received a request for submittal. Please click here to view it. When they open this page where we see the word copies, they are going to see a big red button that says submit. They don't have to submit all these items at once. They just have to hold on to the email until they've submitted all items. So they could submit one today and another one next week. It is going to update them with the due date, and then it will notify you as the sender and anyone who is CC'd when those items are submitted. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this. And hopefully, all we'd have to do is wait. And sometime between now and November 3rd, when my due date is, these items would be submitted. And when they are, they're going to automatically drop from step 3 to step 4. And the sender will get, or the requester will get, an action item and an email letting them know that it's time to review those items. Now, if your vendors have any trouble submitting, we do have videos in the Help Center called Vendor View Videos, and you can search the words vendor view and send them a 5 to 7 minute video on how to submit submittal items through that email. But if you receive them in any other way, you always have this backdoor option, receive submittals, where you can go ahead and gather those items. This is the same thing your vendor is going to see when they click the submit button. It's going to say, okay, well, what date are you submitting these and what are you sending in? We'll make this one an electronic attachment, and I can just add a file. We'll grab a sample file here. And we'll call this materials certificate. The next one, we're going to go ahead and say we also received it today, and this was a physical item. So we'll go ahead and type in a tracking number that was used to ship it to us. Once we save, it's going to go ahead and bring those down as we refresh the tab. I'm going to bring those down to step 4, where they've been received. And now you could come in here and hit the tools icon and review each item individually. This is you as the GC reviewing these. You'll have the ability to mark them up and stamp them. You'll see that in a moment. Or you can just go ahead and review all items in step 4 at once if you're ready to move all of these along. We hit review. Similar screen, right? What's the date that we reviewed it? And what are we passing along? If we say electronic attachment, we can select from what we received and pass it on as is. We can add new files. If you need to add a cover page or an additional document, you can. But you can also mark up and stamp items from right here within RedTeam without having to do any downloading. And to do that, I would just click on this link, and it's going to bring up a preview where I can stamp and mark up. So you can view the document. You can see this is a drawing, not a material certificate. But we can go ahead and stamp or mark it up. We have all those same markup capabilities that we see with our plans and specs. And we've also got a stamp feature here. So I'm going to go ahead and make a markup of some kind. Draw a circle, right? Whatever I need. Got different line capabilities. And then I can stamp. This is my reviewed stamp. And I'm able to choose what the disclaimer should look like. You can set this up in configuration, but you can also customize it case by case. It's going to have your name, the disclaimer, and you can choose what color it should show up in, whether it should have a background or not. Preview it. If you like it, go ahead and apply. If not, you can go back and make edits. And once it's applied, you can then come in here and select it, and we can actually resize and move this item if we'd like. There we go. So you can place it exactly where you need it, have it exactly the right size, depending on your needs. That way, when you go ahead and hit back, it saves automatically. Here's the original copy as received from the provider. Here's the reviewed by RedTeam or reviewed by you copy. And that's going to have those markups and stamps on it. So you can do it that way. If you still need to add a cover page or something else, you can hit the add new files and add those on top of or in addition to this one here. The next piece we're going to go to is that mix design. And we're just going to say received today. We can still say, hey, it was a physical item and I went ahead and shipped it on. Here's the new tracking number. Save. They move down to reviewed. Now, this is where things start to feel a little cyclical because we're going to send another email. This is email number 2, requesting approval of the submittal. And again, I'm going to check the items that should be included in a single email, hit the tools icon for any one of them, and say request for approval. Matches the next step. Again, I'm creating an email. So we've got the request for approval number. We've got our subject line, author, and now we come to approvers versus commenters. We generally recommend a single approver and as many commenters as you want, because if you have multiple approvers, the first person to hit the approve button will move it along through the workflow. It doesn't necessarily care which approver hits the button first, or who should be the final approver, right? It's not a workflow like that, not quite like our invoice approvals. So instead, we advocate that the final approver should be listed as the approver, and anyone else who should take a look before them should be listed as a commenter. Let's go ahead and add an approver. And I'm going to go ahead and see if I can add myself here. There we go. That's going to allow me to show you how to answer it. And then commenters, we can have as many as we want, right? So we can place anybody else that we need in here. Submitted today, any reference or instructions can go here. We can double check the items that were included, and then you get one last chance to change the critical date. What is the due date for these items? So you can go ahead and choose, and then hit save to generate the email. Again, we're not sending the email, we're just generating the draft copy. And now we can go ahead and take a look at it to make sure we don't need to make any edits. It's going to open in our separate browser tab. Notice if you need to go back and make edits, you do have your pencil to do so. This is going to look a little bit more formal. We're sending this to an architect or an owner, and it's going to have a lot of information in here. They can view a PDF copy of this request. They can view the full submittals log, download any attached files, or reach out to your team and see the project contact info here. You're going to see the due date up top once it's committed, and you're going to see all the project information here. In fact, let's go ahead and commit it so that draft watermark's out of the way. It's going to reload, it's going to remove that draft watermark, and it's going to put our due date up top. There we go, due on 11/30. And then as we scroll down, you're going to see the submitted date. The responder, right, it shows everyone their role. The approver is listed as the responder, and the commenters are listed right here. Any instructions here could be something such as, commenters, please review by 11:15 so that approver can respond by 11:30, whatever the case may be. Down here, each item is listed separately and gets its own details button. So we can forward this just to our commenters to have them comment on it. We can forward it for response, and that's going to allow us to send it to our approver. Or we can simply email it out to everyone. If we're not too concerned about controlling this workflow, we can just email it out to the whole group and let them have at it. But as they open this document from their email, they have the details buttons here to look at each individual item separately. So as a commenter, I have access to this comments panel, and I have access to everything in this top section. I'm going to be able to see the due date, the item. I'm going to be able to see any electronic attachments or download files. What I'm not going to see is this enter response section. Only your approver will see this section. So I listed myself as the approver. Let's imagine now that I'm an architect. We do also have approver view videos. So if you want to send those out to your architects, your owners, you can go to the Help Center and send a quick 5-minute video that shows how to respond to a submittal. But what they're going to do here is simply say, what's my response? We have 4 standard options. We have approved as noted. We have approved as submitted, rejected as noted, and rejected not required. Those are our 4 standard options. And you can add as many other options as you want or change the wording of those 4. But there's really only 4 basic workflows that you can follow, which is approved with changes, approved without changes, rejected and needs resubmission, or rejected and doesn't need resubmission. So those are your 4 workflows, and we'll talk about that. I'm going to call this one approved as noted, and we're going to say, please see markups. We can then attach, as the approver, our marked up copy. And it's going to fill in, write my name and the date for me. Now we can go ahead and make sure we call this our final materials certificate. All right, whatever that file is, upload and save. They can upload multiple files, by the way. So if they need to attach multiple files, they can. Once the approver puts in their answer, it's going to show as submitted. And you're going to see right here, it now shows approved as noted by me on this date. We can download any electronic files. For the second one, we'll hit details. And I'm going to go ahead and say rejected as noted. Please resubmit. And I can include files, but I don't have to. That one's going to update. You can still get in through the details button and have a discussion in the comments panel, but now we can see the answers. And as we close this out, we can see that these items have dropped down to answered, and they're showing those answers here. And in fact, let's refresh because it's going to show the answers off to the right for us once we refresh. So we open up right here, and we're going to see approved as noted versus rejected as noted. We still, in both cases, need to notify the provider. That's the next step. Our last step is to send out a final email. I won't walk you through that piece because I know you've seen the other two email creations, but it's essentially the same, right? We're going to check the boxes. If both of these go back to the same vendor, we're going to check the box for both of them. We're going to go ahead and create the email right here, notification to vendor, preview it, and send it out. And all it's asking that vendor to do is acknowledge. And they can accept or not accept for items that were approved as noted. If it's approved as noted with changes, in their acknowledgement, they can say accept or not accept. And if they don't accept and they say, hey, I can't accept those edits, here's why I can't accommodate that, then you can work your way through a resubmission process. If they accept, then you're fine. It sits down here and acknowledged and you're done. In terms of rejected as noted, this one, rejected as noted, means we need resubmission. So it has automatically created us a revision item. Item number 2, revision 1, same item, mixed design, revision, previously rejected. And we just start moving this item through the workflow again for resubmission. We still want to notify the vendor by sending out this item and letting them know so that they can acknowledge. Now, if an item is rejected, either rejected not required or rejected as noted, they don't have any option but to accept. They can simply say, yes, I accept, I acknowledge, I've received the answer. The only item where they would be able to not accept would be if it's approved as noted. Once it's down here and acknowledged, everything's complete. You're done. There's nothing more you need to do. Those items will sit down here for the remainder of the project. You can come back to look at them anytime you need. Anything along the way that you determine you no longer need, you can go ahead and cancel at any time, and it's going to drop down into step 10. Those can also be reopened if you have the right permissions. So that's our submittals workflow. I know we're a little bit over time here. I do want to mention that you have up here under the view icon a submittals log. That's your full submittals log. You can customize what columns you want to be able to see, and you can send that out to Excel or print and save as a PDF anytime you'd like. You've got an outstanding submittals by vendor report. That's going to show you all of your items that are sitting in step 3 that are overdue for submission. And it allows you to send out an email to each vendor with a list of their overdue items. You've also got separate logs for each of those 3 types of emails you send. The first one being the request for submittal, the second one being the request for approval, and the third one being the notification to vendor. So that's all of our reports there. You do also have a couple of extra pages here. You can see a list view of all your submittal items, and you can see separate pages to deal with all of those emails that you've sent. So if you want to see the email and resend it, you can go to these pages to see the specific lists of each type of email you've sent out. But with that, that concludes Project Management Part 2.